The studio lights were blinding. Reporters from CNN, Al Jazeera, France 24, and CCTV lined the rows, adjusting headsets, whispering into mics. The Global Leadership Summit was being streamed in 27 languages, watched by millions around the world. The mood? Electric. Suddenly, Elon Musk leaned into his microphone. Africa? He scoffed with a smile. Great people. But let's be honest, they've contributed very little to global innovation. If not for us, they'd still be catching up to the 20th century. Gasps filled the air. A hush swept through the room. Camera lenses whirred toward Captain Ibrahim Traoré, seated calmly at the far end of the stage in his decorated Burkina Faso uniform. He didn't move. Not yet. His eyes locked on Musk, sharp, still, unreadable. Whispers stirred. A young African journalist dropped her notepad. Tears welled in her eyes. But Traoré? Silent. At that moment, the weight of a continent sat on his shoulders, and the world waited to see if he'd respond, or stay silent. But no one, not even Musk, was ready for what would come next. The moderators tried to shift topics. Let's move to climate innovations, one suggested nervously. But the room wasn't listening. Every eye stayed on Captain Ibrahim Traoré. And finally, he moved. He stood, not abruptly, but slowly, purposefully. The room fell so quiet, you could hear the hum of the lights. Musk turned his head slightly, smug expression still intact. Cameras zoomed in on Traoré's face. Calm, focused. But behind his eyes, a storm was building. Traoré took a breath. You say Africa lacks innovation, he began, voice even and low. Yet our lands power your devices. Our people bleed for your tech. You build rockets, yes, but we build resilience, with hands that have known drought, war, and betrayal. A flicker crossed Musk's face. Traoré continued, now stepping toward the center. You mistake silence for absence, but even silence speaks, if you have the humility to listen. The audience was stunned. Journalists forgot their scripts. Some reached for tissues, visibly moved. Even Musk looked momentarily unsure. But Traoré wasn't finished. Let me show you, he said. Let me take you back. And with that, he began to tell a story no one expected, and everyone needed to hear. The room dimmed slightly, lights softening as Traoré's tone grew personal. I was 12, he said, voice steady. The day I watched my older brother die. Not from war, not from crime, but from thirst. The room tightened. Cameras zoomed in. A tear ran down the cheek of a journalist from South Africa. Our village well had dried. It was the third year without rain. My brother, he walked 8 kilometers for water. He never came back. Traoré paused. Back then, innovation wasn't a machine or a rocket. Innovation was a jerry can strapped to a bicycle. Innovation was a mother teaching her children to sip, not drink, to survive, not live. The silence in the room felt sacred, and while your world watched us from satellites, we were digging with bare hands, hoping to strike water. He glanced back at Musk, but not with anger, with something deeper, something quieter. So don't tell me Africa contributes nothing. We have been innovating survival while the world forgot us. A sniffle echoed from the crowd. The truth was cutting through the pride of power. And everyone knew. This was no longer a debate. It was a reckoning. Captain Ibrahim Traoré stood silently in front of the microphone. His face was calm. Too calm. The camera zoomed closer. The room had gone still. Even Elon Musk leaned back in his chair, sensing something deeper was coming. Traoré looked out into the crowd and began softly. Where I come from, we don't measure progress by Wi-Fi speed, but by how many children made it to the next day. A chill ran through the studio. I once held a boy in my arms, Traoré continued, voice trembling just slightly. His stomach bloated from hunger, his lips cracked from thirst. His name was Karim. He was 5, and he died waiting for help that never came. Someone in the back gasped. A female reporter lowered her eyes, visibly shaken. Traoré's voice grew firmer. That boy didn't need a rocket. He needed water. He needed dignity. He paused. So when someone with billions says Africa has contributed nothing, I ask, how can you speak of value when you've never held a dying child and felt powerless to save him? Even Elon Musk looked down, his smile gone. The world didn't blink. And Traoré wasn't done. You could feel it in the room. No one had expected this. Not from a soldier. Not from an African leader. Certainly not from someone Elon Musk tried to humiliate. But Captain Traoré wasn't performing. He wasn't reading a speech. He was remembering. And that made it real. I remember walking to school barefoot, he said, looking at the cameras. The sand would burn our feet. But we walked. Because knowledge was our hope. He turned to face Musk directly now. I don't need to impress anyone with spacesuits or AI. What we're building in Africa is different. We're building hope. Under shade trees, in dusty classrooms, with no air conditioning and sometimes no chalk. The audience began to nod. Even reporters from countries that had ignored Africa before were now leaning in. I don't want your pity, Traoré said calmly. I want your respect. And if that's too much to ask, I'll take neither and still walk with my head high. A standing ovation began, slow, uncertain. But it grew. And Elon Musk, still seated, face blank. A global moment was unfolding. And Ibrahim Traoré was no longer speaking just for himself. He was speaking for all of Africa. The broadcast ended, but the story didn't. Within minutes, Traoré's response had been clipped, subtitled, and reposted across the globe. On TikTok, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, millions watched in silence. In New York, a teacher paused her lesson and played the video. Her students cried. In Lagos, buses replayed the speech on their screens. In a refugee camp in Mali, children sat barefoot around a single smartphone, listening, nodding. This stand with Traoré trended globally. But something deeper happened. People didn't just admire Traoré. They felt him. They remembered their own pain, their forgotten family, their poverty, their lost brothers, their stolen dignity. Elon Musk released no statement, but many noticed he had quietly unfollowed several African leaders. Meanwhile, Traoré released a single tweet. Africa doesn't need saviors. We need space to grow. It went viral. In Burkina Faso, people flooded the streets, chanting his name, holding candles for Karim and the children like him. This wasn't just politics anymore. This was history. And still, Traoré hadn't revealed the final part of his story. The secret that made his voice tremble when he said the boy's name. The secret that would break the world's heart. The studio lights flickered softly as the camera lingered on Traoré's face. For a moment, he seemed far away, lost in memory. He took a slow breath and spoke quietly, as if sharing a secret. When I was a child, my village had no electricity, no hospitals nearby. We used to gather under the stars, not because it was peaceful, but because we had no choice. His voice cracked just a little. The reporters leaned in. We would dream of a future where children could study at night, where sick people could get medicine, where hope wasn't just a story told by elders. Traoré's eyes shone with tears he refused to shed. And yet, some still say Africa lacks innovation. He looked up, steady and strong. We innovate every day, in ways you can't see from space. We invent courage. We build with nothing. We survive. Elon Musk shifted in his seat, his usual confident smile gone. The room was silent. The world was watching. Traoré's words echoed beyond the studio. But inside, his heart was heavy. He remembered his mother, how she worked from dawn to dusk, carrying water from miles away, making sure her children never gave up. He remembered his father, a farmer who taught him that the soil beneath their feet was rich with promise, even when others saw dust. His story wasn't just his own. It was the story of millions, millions who dared to dream despite the odds. Traoré's voice grew firmer. When you dismiss us, you dismiss our mothers, our fathers, our brothers and sisters who fight every day for a better life. He paused, his gaze meeting the camera. This is not arrogance. This is truth. We are not waiting for permission to rise. Elon Musk's face betrayed a flicker of doubt. The crowd felt it too. This was no longer just a debate. It was a call for recognition. Suddenly, Traoré smiled. A soft, powerful smile. He raised his hand, palm open. Let me tell you about Karim. The studio quieted. Karim was a boy from a small village like mine. He loved to run barefoot and chase the sun. But one day he fell ill. Traoré's voice caught. There was no doctor nearby, no medicine, just hope. He looked around the room, holding every eye. Karim's story could be any child's story. A story of struggle, yes, but also of endless hope. Traoré's voice grew strong again. And because of people like him, Africa is not broken. It is not failing. It is alive, resilient, and full of innovation, born from survival. Elon Musk sat frozen, the words settling in. The cameras stopped flashing. For a moment the world was silent. Then something shifted. The story was no longer about insult. It was about respect. Captain Ibrahim Traoré's voice softened as he continued. Karim's last day was like many others, full of sunlight and laughter. But when night fell, he became very sick. He paused, swallowing the lump in his throat. There was no hospital nearby. His mother ran barefoot through the night, searching for help, for medicine, for anything that could save her son. The studio was silent. Even the harshest critics felt the weight of those words. Karim's village didn't have electricity or clean water. His mother couldn't afford a trip to the city hospital. She stayed by his side, praying for a miracle. Tears welled in the eyes of some reporters. Traoré's voice grew stronger. When Karim died, it wasn't just a life lost. It was a story forgotten by the world. But, he said, looking into the cameras, this story is why we fight. We fight for every Karim, for every child waiting for hope. The room remained still, the air thick with emotion. Traoré stood taller, his eyes shining with fierce pride. In Africa, innovation doesn't always mean rockets or fancy gadgets, he explained. It means finding a way to grow crops in dry soil. It means creating medicine from local plants when hospitals are far. He smiled softly. It means using the sun, the wind, and the strength of community to build a better future. Traoré glanced at Musk. You see innovation as what your factories produce. We see it as what keeps us alive. He turned to the reporters. When we innovate, it's not for applause. It's for survival, for hope, for the children who dream of a tomorrow they've never seen. The crowd nodded, some wiping tears. The tension in the studio began to shift. Traoré's words were not just a defense. They were a lesson. The room fell into heavy silence after Traoré's speech. Elon Musk sat quietly, his face unreadable. Reporters whispered. Cameras clicked softly. No one knew what Musk would say next. Minutes passed like hours. Then, Traoré's calm voice broke the silence. I ask you all, he said, to remember Karim, to see the children behind the headlines, to understand that Africa is not a problem to be solved, but a people to be respected. A few brave claps began, then many more. The applause swelled. Traoré's message was clear. This was more than a comeback. It was a call to change the world's view. And as the cameras rolled, something shifted. Not just in the room, but across the world. The story had only just begun. Captain Ibrahim Traoré's gaze was steady as he spoke about leadership, not as a title, but as a responsibility. In my country, he said quietly, being a leader means waking up every day knowing people depend on you for hope. He paused. It means carrying the weight of history, of sacrifices made by those who came before us. Traoré looked directly into the camera. I carry those memories, of villages without schools, of families torn apart by war and hunger. But I also carry the strength of my people. He smiled softly. Strength born from faith, from unity, from unyielding determination to rise. Some in the audience wiped tears. This strength, Traoré continued, is not flashy. It is quiet. It is real. And it is what drives Africa forward. Even Elon Musk could not hide a flicker of respect. The room felt alive with a new understanding. For Traoré, leadership was more than words. It was a promise. Traoré's voice softened as he shared a memory. When I was a boy, I dreamed of flying. He smiled wistfully. Not just for myself, but for all the children who never got the chance. He described nights spent under starlit skies, imagining planes, rockets, and the future. But dreams alone do not build nations, he said firmly. It is the courage to face hardship, to build with what you have, that makes change. Traoré looked at the cameras, eyes full of fire. Africa's innovation is born from this courage. He spoke of farmers using solar power, young engineers inventing affordable tech, communities rebuilding after conflict. This continent is not waiting in the shadows, he declared. It is stepping into the light. The crowd erupted into applause. Even Musk's expression softened, a silent nod. Traoré's words were no longer just a comeback, they were a beacon. Traoré's voice trembled slightly as he spoke the name again. Karim, the boy who had once lit a fire in his heart. I made a promise to Karim's mother that day, to fight so no child would die alone or forgotten. His eyes burned with conviction. This promise guides every decision I make. Traoré raised his hand, palm open. We will build schools, hospitals, and roads. We will bring clean water to every village. We will give every child the chance to dream and to soar. The studio was silent, overwhelmed by his passion. A single tear rolled down the cheek of a reporter. The moment was raw, real, and unforgettable. And across the world, millions watched, moved beyond words. Traoré's comeback had become a mission, not just for Africa, but for humanity. Captain Ibrahim Traoré looked out at the world, not as a critic, but as a man carrying hope. The future of Africa is not in someone else's hands, he said softly. It is in ours, built on the sacrifices of those who came before. He thought of Karim, of his mother, of countless families waiting for change. I stand here today not as a voice of anger, but as a beacon of promise. His eyes glistened. Every step we take is for those who deserve a chance. Education, healthcare, opportunity. The room was silent, wrapped in the weight of his words. This is our time to rise, he whispered. Not because we are perfect, but because we are determined. Even Elon Musk watched quietly. A profound respect had settled over the room. The world had seen the exchange, but they felt the story. Across continents, millions shared Traoré's message. From bustling cities to remote villages, his words echoed. Social media exploded with hashtags, tears, and hope. Leaders, students, mothers, and children, all inspired. Many admitted they had misunderstood Africa's story. A new narrative was born, not of poverty and failure, but of resilience and brilliance. Traoré became a symbol. a man who dared to speak truth to power with grace. His speech sparked programs, donations, and partnerships, not because he asked for charity, but because he demanded respect. The world was waking up, and Africa was ready. As the broadcast ended, Traoré looked into the camera one last time. "Thank you for listening," he said, voice warm but firm. "Remember Karim and every child who deserves a chance." He smiled, hopeful. "This is just the beginning. Together, we will build a future where every dream can fly." The screen faded, but the impact stayed. If this story moved you, if it touched your heart, please hit like and subscribe to join this journey with us. Share your thoughts in the comments below. Tell us your story, your hope, your dream. Let's build a community of hope, strength, and respect together. Every comment matters. Every view helps spread this powerful message. Let's keep the conversation alive. Your voice can change the world.